Big Sam. We had the first interview yesterday morning, Sam, when Sam very kindly spoke to us from his office at the Leeds United training ground. Do English managers still not really get given the same kudos as their European counterparts? Allardyce responded to his critics later in the day by insisting that his knowledge of the game puts him on the same level as some of the Premier League's elite managers. Have a listen to this.
Far too many people think that I am old and antiquated, which is so far from the truth. I might be 68 and look old, but there's nobody ahead of me in football terms. Not Pep, not Klopp, not Arteta. I share it with them. They do what they do. I do what I do. But in terms of knowledge and depth of knowledge, I'm up there with them. I'm not saying I'm better than them, but certainly as good as they are. I just wish that sometimes you can get the opportunity that you can show it, but that's never going to happen for me now, apart from keep Leeds up. And if I stayed at Leeds, this club was big enough to build a team that was going to challenge those boys eventually.
That was Big Sam. I mean, is it true? Do we put them in a box? Them being the likes of Sam, Harry, Warnock, Pulis. Do we put them in a box, or you know, do they have a chip on their shoulder?
Not really. Why would you say that? 9 managers in the Premier League are currently English or Scottish, and managing. So that's 45% of the Premier League is occupied by homegrown managers.
Well, when Sean Dyche sat right there with us, he said he's been put in a box.
Well, because,
it does happen.
Because people come up, they compartmentalise a style of play, and sometimes that's unfair. Eddie Howe's not in a box anymore, is he? He's managing the richest club in the world, arguably, in some people's minds. So he's inside that particular outcome. And when you listen to stuff in the past when people like Harry Redknapp used to trot out these little tropes, like if Eddie Howe was called Eduardo Suarez, he'd be managing a top 4 side. And the reasons why in the past English football clubs and English owners have shied away from English managers is because of the attitude and outlook of these English managers that don't work as hard as their counterparts, don't have the same ability to be able to manage up, don't have the same desire to evolve, spend more time reading the racing post, and sometimes just bleeding bone idle and come up with those sort of tropes. That's the reasons why they earned the reputation that they've got.
But that's quite a sweeping generalisation.
That's the reasons why in the Mike Bassett film, the parody of our English manager is a guy doing a conga, drinking, smoking, or flaming martinis, and Pele walking in a room, because that's what the world thought of English managers, and that's what they brought upon themselves. And having employed a lot of English managers, I can attest to the fact that sometimes that's right. But we've now moved on, and we have better calibre of English managers. The problem is when you take a manager and you stick him in a high-profile job like Chelsea, and he fails, because Chelsea have put 2 English managers in out of the last 3. Lampard didn't do the particularly great job, did okay, didn't do the greatest job, and when the benefit of hindsight, you look back over what he did and take the emotion out of it that we all had when he got fired, because we all like Frank, and you look at it and go, yeah, maybe that wasn't that great. And then you look at Potter, you start to unwind your own argument, because the previous people in situ at Chelsea were moderately successful and got fired when they were moderately successful. The English guys go in there and they don't do it. Now, Sam Allardyce's observation is, I don't doubt, and it's a qualified observation, a little bit more qualified than when I first heard it, I don't doubt that he has a humongous body of knowledge. Well, that's great. But the ability to be able to impart that wisdom to teams that can do better and have players that develop and clubs that can win is a very different thing from having the knowledge in the first place. We can all have great deals of knowledge. And again, given that Sam has managed hundreds of games in the Premier League and been responsible for lots of positive outcomes, he can attribute knowledge as being something akin to those that manage at the top of the league. But he ain't no Klopp. And he ain't no Guardiola.
No.
And I'm sorry, Sam, I'm a huge fan of yours, and I don't like the box that you get put in, which is that you're a dinosaur, that you only play one brand of football, that you play an antiquated... And
so he's right, he does get put in a box.
Well, he gets put in a box at times.
Sean Dyche was right, they do get put in a box.
Because people's... By certain quarters, not by all quarters, by lazy people looking at it in a lazy way, because they look at Sam's brand of football, and it started back in the day when Bolton were beating up teams like Arsenal, and people like Arsene Wenger didn't like it, and started to create a narrative around the way that Bolton played. And Bolton had to play a certain way against sides like Arsenal, because Arsenal were a richer football club with better players that were technically better. But that didn't alter the fact that Sam was a progressive manager, played to the strengths of the resources that he's got, and used all the technology around him to enhance the lesser fare that he had.
There's James, the Arsenal fan, is saying this morning he's a bit deluded. Sam Allardyce has only himself to blame, a real chip in his shoulder, and all focused on not getting relegation rather than winning trophies. Martinez got relegated with Wigan, but won the FA Cup, and look at the jobs he's had since.
Well, come on.
There's a point in that, though.
I mean, the jobs.
Could Sam Dyche or Harry manage Belgium and then go on and manage Portugal?
Where Sam will be disappointed is the timing of opportunities that he took, right? Because Newcastle United would be considered to be in a reasonably decent job, right? And it's on public record that Mike Ashley regrets firing Sam Allardyce as quick as he did, right? So with that in mind, Newcastle opportunities taken away from him.
Yeah.
Blackburn and West Ham were clubs that were in decline at those times. Sunderland, he comes in and fixes. England, well, he was the architect of his own downfall there. He created a great outcome for Palace. So the jobs that Sam Allardyce was offered were the jobs that were available to him to take, and each one of them he's done, and done well. The question will abound, why doesn't he get opportunities at the higher end of the division? Well, that is the luck of the dice sometimes. That's all about timing.
Sure.
But I think Sam Allardyce is no doubt a manager worthy of a level of recognition and value, and of course the knowledge base. I don't know what he's come back. I mean, I sat with Sam in November before he went to Qatar with Graeme and Sam on an afternoon thing with talking about managers and owners and so on and so forth. And Sam was very strident about his views, and Graeme was sort of slightly critical about or thinking, well, you haven't actually won anything, Sam, which is true. But Sam is a very capable manager, and it's right for him to say that he's got as much education. But I'm sorry, he doesn't operate at their level. He doesn't, because there's an X factor.
Well, we'll see.
There's an X factor with Guardiola. They've got something different, and that's what they've got, and that's why they are who they are. But Sam has got something.
Is there an X factor with Eddie Howe?
I think Eddie Howe is more akin to a continental coach.
See, you had to stop me your tracks here, though. That's not an immediate. Sure.
I think there's beginning to become one. Yeah, I think Eddie Howe it doesn't have a charismatic personality in the same way that possibly Klopp does, and possibly Guardiola does. But what he does have is an immense amount of diligence and forthrightness and authenticity that will translate to the players well. And at this stage in his development, despite my observations of him previously, I think he's in the groove, and I think he could be something quite significant, Eddie Howe. Okay. That's up to Eddie Howe. If Eddie Howe doesn't start reading the press about Eddie Howe, I think he could really do very well.
Well, Eddie Howe's Newcastle await Big Sam and Leeds United, because they play them next but one. First up for Sam, you guessed it, Manchester City away. 4 games for Leeds United to preserve their Premier League status under Sam Allardyce. We're at 10:30.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.